I'm Katherine Carter, together with my co-host,
Kirsten Larson.
And this is the Radiant Journey podcast. The writer of Proverbs tells us that the lovers of God walk on the highway of light, and their way shines brighter and brighter until the perfect day. This is a podcast about discovering the revelatory wisdom and surprises that Jesus plants along our journey, and the joy of unpacking and putting to use the nuggets that we uncover. If you struggle with finding or staying true to your unique purpose, or you just need a little encouragement to keep you going, we hope that this is a safe place to rest and refuel for your next steps. Yours is a radiant journey, and we want you to savor every moment of it. Shall we begin? Welcome back, everyone. So good to have you here on the Radiant Journey podcast. We are on episode 10 today, and we are going to jump right in. Well, Brené Brown is a celebrated author and researcher and scholar, and at the heart of her message is the subject of vulnerability and how beautiful and necessary it is in our lives. On her website, she gives her bottom line, which sums up her take on this subject. She says, I believe that you have to walk through vulnerability to get to courage. Therefore, embrace the suck. She says, I try to be grateful every day, and my motto right now is courage over comfort. Well, many thousands and thousands of folks have read her books, have watched her famous TED Talk from 2010 on vulnerability. And I wanted to just define it here before we even go any farther. This is straight from the Merriam-Webster Online Dictionary. Vulnerability is the being capable of being physically or emotionally wounded. It can also mean open to attack or damage. It also can equate to susceptibility, which is the quality or state of having little resistance to some outside agent. Well, in Brené's book, Daring Greatly, and her other writings, she champions vulnerability and she encourages us not to stay locked down and hidden from the world, but to embrace vulnerability and move forward. And here are the reasons she gives for that. She says vulnerability is the core, the heart, the center of meaningful human experience. She said courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. And then one of the most powerful things I think I've ever heard her say is there is no intimacy without vulnerability. Wow. So she goes right for the jugular on this. She's hilarious, by the way. If you've never seen her TED Talk, you got to try that out. It'll inspire you to be the boldest version of yourself you've ever seen. I love her stuff. And yet, vulnerability is not just easier because of some great quote from an author, right? Vulnerability requires that we step outside our comfort zone. We do something we haven't done before, say something we haven't said before, or maybe talk to someone we haven't before. There's a lot of risk involved. And with a lot of risk means increased possibility that we're going to be hurt, that we're going to suffer in some way, that we could possibly be embarrassed or ashamed. So we're going to just take a look at all of this and see if we can find a way to navigate a path through this crucial part of the human experience.
Yeah. Ooh, it's so good. I love talking about vulnerability because it's such a core element of our humanity. And one of the things that you said was there's no intimacy without vulnerability.
Yeah.
Quote from Brené Brown. And, that's another version of that. We often talk about being intimate with God and learning how to be intimate and create relationships with people. Well, what if it backfires on us? Right? We're all thinking, I think, why don't we, if vulnerability is so good, why don't we do it more? And so today we want to talk about this phrase we've probably heard cultivated. If you haven't heard it, you certainly know what it feels like. vulnerability hangovers.
No, I hate those.
And it's that feeling after you were vulnerable in some way, shape, or form that you feel exposed and open and kind of raw. And it's one of the reasons we don't go back into vulnerability
Mhm.
and vulnerable situations because we don't like that feeling. So today, they happen for many different reasons.
Yeah.
And today we're just going to look at two types
Yeah.
of vulnerability hangovers. There's many of them.
Mhm.
And those two being, when you share with someone and they don't receive it in the way you hoped they would,
Ah, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's one of them. We're going to look at that a little bit more in depth. And then number two, there's also this element of when you step out courageously, you did it. You did the thing. We're going to get more into depth with that, but suddenly, even if you did an amazing job, a performance, you spoke, you prayed in public, you did something, and all of a sudden you feel all the flood of emotions and thoughts
Yeah.
swirling in. And we don't want you to shut down. We want you to keep being vulnerable. We want you to keep being brave and courageous. So, how do you do that? And why do these things happen? And so, we're going to start with number one. When you share with someone and are vulnerable, and it doesn't feel like they received it quite right.
Yeah. That's a really hard one. I think that when we talk about this type of vulnerability hangover, I am flooded immediately with all of these memories from school, right? All the way back to elementary school, junior high, high school. It kind of goes on throughout your life, but I think we're particularly susceptible to this vulnerability hangover in the school years because there's so much pressure to be liked, to be seen
Mm.
or not seen, depending on your personality. And we want people to like us. And so what is the number one thing that you do to try to make friends is put a little of yourself out there. Hey, I like this particular brand of clothes. Oh, I like that particular brand of clothes too. That's
Mm.
cool. We should go shopping together sometime, right? That's the way you hope it will go.
Mm.
But what happens when you say that about the brand of clothes that you like and there's crickets
Mm.
after your comment, or they just kind of give you this awkward smile? And suddenly these feelings of shame can come over you, right?
Mm.
And you feel like, why did I do that? Like, oh, I should have just kept my mouth shut. These are
Mm.
the inner little shaming messages that immediately start flooding our minds and hearts is why did I do this? And I think if you have enough of those bad experiences of trying to put yourself out there and trying to share a bit of your heart and it's not received well, you just start shutting it down. So then the
Mm.
question becomes, is it even possible
Mm.
to navigate this landscape of vulnerability with any sort of guardrails or guidance,
Mm.
or is this just going to be a tightrope walk and I just have to suck it up and be brave? I don't know.
Mm.
I mean, I think a lot of people would be like, yeah, that's okay.
Mm.
I'm good, I'm fine. But I think that the word of God actually gives us something that can be a great help to keep our hearts open and soft
Mm.
and yet speak and communicate and connect with people with wisdom.
Mm.
And so there's this interesting thing that Jesus says in Matthew 7. And when you first read it, it sounds a bit offensive. He says, "Don't give dogs what is sacred. Do not throw your pearls to pigs. If you do, they may trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces."
Okay.
Oh my gosh, right? Uh, I'm not in the habit of calling people around me dogs or pigs. So that can't be what Jesus meant, right? No, no, we got to remember this is a parable. He uses symbolic language
Mhm.
to connect with our human experience,
Mm.
right? He's trying to give us some wisdom.
Mm.
And what I've learned about this passage is that Jesus is trying to say, there are going to be things that you treasure and that you value.
Yeah.
And if you have something of value,
Yeah.
you don't just go throw it in front of a bunch of pigs,
Yeah.
right? Pigs don't know what to do with it. Pigs, you can't really have a relationship with them, right? It would be very silly to throw a beautiful string of pearls into a pig pen. They would trample them. They wouldn't know what to do with them. They wouldn't handle it well,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that this parable helps us to understand that we shouldn't speak about all of the things that are most dear to us, or maybe the inner workings of our heart, with just anyone.
Mm.
We're not trying to say, beware of the pigs and the dogs, like as though that's a judgment on the people around us. What we're learning from Jesus here is that we need to be thoughtful about who we're telling our most important stuff to.
Yeah.
If you feel a certain way, and let's say you are trying to figure out how you feel about something very important,
Yeah.
and you want to share it with someone to maybe see what they think,
Mm-hmm.
bounce it up against them, get some feedback. You're not going to go to someone who has a reputation for being coarse or rude or sarcastic, or someone who just doesn't speak to you with respect and kindness, right? You want to find someone who's a good listener. You want somebody who cares about you, who has the ability to receive someone else's thoughts without putting you down for them, but is open to them. Even if they don't agree necessarily with your point of view, they know how to deal respectfully. They know how to receive well what it is that you're sharing. And so I think that Matthew 7 is an opportunity for us to take this piece of wisdom and apply it in our lives, where we just give a thought. We pause first before we just start sharing all of our innermost thoughts with just anybody in our lives. I know Danny Silk, in
Mm-hmm.
his book Keep Your Love On, talks about the inner circle of friends
Mm-hmm.
and the different tiers of friends outside of that inner circle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if I was going to liken that to what Jesus is saying here, pigs and swine and dogs and people who can't handle stuff are probably going to be on the outer rings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your inner circle are people who are able to listen, who care, who are open, and who don't shame you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I'm grateful that Jesus said this, because it causes me to want to think first before I share.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that even in my own world, I think what I like to think of it as is creating a bridge. And you think of that phrase of trust takes time. And what I like to think of it as, like, when you're building a bridge between you and someone,
Mhm.
you're kind of, you put out one layer of yourself and you see how they receive it.
Yeah.
And then if they're receiving it, it creates a little step towards you. And as you create another step towards them, you kind of find out what level and layer of circle they can handle of your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes they can handle vulnerability in one area of your life, but
Mhm.
not in another.
That's true.
And I like to kind of think of it as, like, I'm building that bridge to find out their capacity.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean something's wrong with me, and it doesn't mean something's wrong with them. We are just all wired to be able to have different capacities.
Mhm.
For example, if I have 5 people in my inner vulnerable circle and they've been sharing those details with me, I may not have capacity for one other person. And if
Mhm.
you walk into my world in that moment and share your most vulnerable moments, I may not have the full capacity to be raw and receive it super well.
Yeah.
And that's where a bridge can kind of be helpful, is to even just find out where someone is in that moment. Are
Mhm.
they in a receiving state? Are they going to respond well?
Mhm.
We even do that as friends here. Catherine and I, close friends for a long, long time. And we kind of just go, okay, oh, she's tired. She's had clients all day. She's tired, not ready for this vulnerable moment, right? Even
Mhm.
as friends.
Mhm.
And that's kind of helped me to recognize as an adult this picture of, feeling someone out. Where are they at in this moment? How
Mhm.
much of me can they receive in this moment?
Mhm.
And that kind of goes into your kind of thinking before you share all the things.
Right.
Like, we want to be brave and vulnerable,
Mhm.
but we also don't want you to just cast that pearl
Mhm.
out before someone who's not ready for it.
Right.
And sometimes you think of that pearl as being so precious. You want to find out if the person has capacity
Yes.
to receive it. And
Yeah, I really like this. And I want to temper it with something that I know that there are some listeners who are going to listen to this, and their radar for being codependent and avoiding codependent behavior is
yeah,
going to creep up as we talk about this.
yeah.
How do you
Mm,
be aware of where someone else is at,
mm.
okay, without tiptoeing around them?
Sure.
Okay, because we're not suggesting, guys, we are
Yeah.
not suggesting that you just tiptoe around people and you only speak when you feel like it's safe.
Right.
Okay, we're talking about raising your level of awareness, getting your own mind out of your own head for a minute, and reading the room for a
Mhm.
sec, right? If someone is having a really difficult time, you need to dig into that piece of wisdom that says, hey, if they're having a really hard time, their bandwidth and capacity, I love that word, Kirsten,
Mhm.
that you use, capacity, their capacity may not be what it needs to be in order for me to share. Okay. I
Mhm.
remember one time, oh gosh, this has probably happened multiple times, but I have a learning curve, right? So I've learned over the years of being your friend. But when you are in work mode,
Mm.
okay, I can switch out of work mode into let's just
Yes.
chat, chat, chat mode, back and forth, no problem. And I've noticed when you're in work mode, just because you're in the room, in the similar room to me, does not mean that it is the right time to talk to you about some random trivia that I wanted to share with you.
Mhm.
Okay. And that can be challenging if I'm just in my own head,
Mhm.
right? Like I heard something that was so funny, and my heart's desire is that you're going to laugh with me, right? You're going to
Mhm.
enjoy this with me. So I have an expectation. This is what I hope that is going to happen as a reaction to what I'm saying. But if I just jump into telling you
Mhm.
while your mind is somewhere else completely, I need some work on my ability to be aware of where people are at and what's been going on, because I'll tell you what, it has helped me to now avoid many disappointments, right? Because it begins as disappointment. Before we
Mhm.
start shutting down, it begins as a disappointment. Oh, they weren't able to respond the way I was hoping, or they weren't really listening to me. So just wanted to make that clarification.
Mhm.
We're not encouraging codependent,
Yeah.
walking on eggshells behavior, but we are inviting you to stretch your level of awareness by getting out of your own head for a minute and getting better at reading the room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really about discernment
Yeah.
and recognizing, because I hear that this regularly of like, what's wrong with them? Why couldn't they hear that? Or what's wrong with me? Is there something wrong
Mhm.
with me?
Yeah.
And I think on both ends of the spectrum, it's almost like I used to love to play with Legos.
Mhm.
And so it's almost like that alignment of two Legos together. And if you're trying to put them together in the wrong way, they just don't fit.
Yeah.
And it's this moment of going, okay, they're not in the headspace for it, or they're not the right person for that information. And being able to just kind of discern that can help you feel like a whole, normal, integrated human being that goes, oh, that person can receive information about this type of thing in this moment.
Yeah.
And Catherine's right. When I am in creator mode and I'm creating, I am deep, deep in the back of my head. If
Mhm.
I'm managing a room or an event, I am thinking about all those details. I'm not ready for vulnerability. And I really love the vulnerable places of hearts.
Yeah.
So, if you find me out there and I'm in one of those places and I didn't receive it well, it's usually because I'm deep in the back of my head and I'm
Yeah.
not even, I'm present, but in a different way.
Yeah.
I'm present with what I'm doing. And so, being able to recognize and discern what's that person's capacity and what's my own capacity right now if they don't receive it.
Yeah. Yeah.
um you know
I think this is a great opportunity right here to speak to anybody in out there in listening land who may be thinking of a pastor or leader, a boss, maybe someone in charge of them or over them who has missed them or has made them not feel seen or hasn't validated something that they tried to say or do. It may be that what actually happened was a misalignment of timing,
Mm.
that those people with those levels of responsibility are often overloaded with so many different little pieces to think about that they're not able to be what we hope that they would be.
Mm.
A place I've seen this happen for myself multiple times is I will visit a church I've never been to before, hear a sermon that rocks my world. I'm like, wow, this is amazing. And my entire being just wants to go up and tell that pastor how amazing of a job they did and how deeply it touched my life.
Mm.
And I'm practically in tears, ready to tell them this. I wait in line to say hello to them or whatever and let them know how much I appreciated them. And then I was massively disappointed with how uninterested they seemed to be in my comments. And I thought, man, I took all this time to come up and to tell you how deeply you touched my heart. This was a vulnerable moment for me. And you couldn't even just receive that with grace. Oh gosh, I had to work through that with Jesus. But I just want to encourage you, if that's ever happened to you, guys, we're learning how to be vulnerable. And I want to just encourage you, don't stop being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Keep taking those risks.
Yeah.
Well, maybe let's just move on to number two. I think these number one and number two kind of overlap each
Mm.
other.
Yeah.
And I think the other type of vulnerability hangover is not necessarily that we shared a deep piece of our heart,
Mm.
but actually put ourselves out there to do something that required risk taking.
Mm.
For example, we wrote a couple of examples here: speaking up in a meeting,
Mhm.
maybe at work, doing an opening prayer, giving a speech. These are things that require a lot of courage,
Mhm.
right? Beginning to walk out those things that you know that the Lord has called you to do, but you're brand new at it.
Mhm.
It takes a lot of courage to do that.
Yeah.
And when people don't receive it well, or let's just say you get hardly any feedback, that
Mm.
can be super challenging.
Yeah, and you know what? I've seen it super challenging even on the flip side when everybody stands up and applauds and the person comes back down from on stage or giving a speech or doing an act or doing a creative thing and they're like, "Oh, I just feel so vulnerable." And there's this like flood in your nervous system and your body and your brain starts going down all these like rapid fire things of everything you did and you're not even aware of what the room responded. Right? It's like, even to put out a video on social media or put out this podcast or do different things, it's a risk in vulnerability, in faith, in courage. And in that space, on the other side of releasing it is this kind of feeling of, did I do my best that I
Yeah.
could do? I
Yeah.
did. And it's almost not even how anybody received it sometimes. It's like they could totally flop, they could give you negative comments, or they could be standing ovation
Hmm.
and you're looking at yourself. And I definitely fall into that category a little bit more because I'm a little bit more I trained in cross country, and we learned to compete against ourselves.
Mm.
And I learned to compete against myself the most. And so I
Yeah.
always kind of had the most scrutiny against myself. How
Mhm.
did I do? I don't care how anybody else received it. Did I do the best that I could do?
Yeah.
And that was something, I had to really walk through. And I think actually it helped me to walk through that journey with other people, that seeing how well they did and seeing that did, they did the speech, they did the prayer, it was excellent. And seeing how odd it made me feel to watch someone that I celebrated to even go, you did it, and to realize the way I gave them feedback. You did it. You took the step. You believed. You did the best you could. You did an amazing job. And then to hear their internal dialogue
Yeah.
actually encouraged me to just give that dialogue to myself.
So I think what you're really kind of getting into is that there can be a correlation between sort of self scrutiny, self judgment, perfectionism, maybe people who feel more safe when they know that they've gotten it right, they've done a perfect job. There's very little room for grace, which in turn makes vulnerability very challenging
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
And so what are we really saying here? Well, hey, vulnerability is a sign that you put yourself out there.
Yeah.
It's a sign that you're being courageous and you're being bold. And there are very clear things that you can do to get better at it.
Mhm.
One is be a little bit more thoughtful about who you're sharing your most important stuff with. When we're talking about sharing our hearts, be thoughtful about that. Be thoughtful of who you're sharing it with. Not everybody needs to hear your most important stuff. Those of you who are in therapy, you've probably been encouraged by your therapist. Maybe Aunt Linda is not the right person to talk to about these things, but it sounds like your friend Betsy is the best. Go with that. Listen, because there are people in your life who can give you encouragement and help you figure out who are my safe people, who are people to try out the deepest parts of my heart with and to share those things with. And then number two, you really want to take a look at sort of that self critical thing that can happen. And to be honest, that is a healing journey. That is part of this walk of life. All of us have to unpack, like Kirsten spoke of. The triathlon training really trained her to compete against herself, but it also brought really high expectations in that can be kind of defeating and make you question and second guess yourself, even when you've done amazing.
Yeah. So if you're finding that that vulnerability hangover is happening regularly, it's really bothering you often when you share with people or you take a brave step, it might be that you might need to get some rejection healed, to get those inner places really healed by the Lord, letting Jesus into those places where there's that opening and really inviting Him to be your cheerleader and building that inner dialogue that allows you to say, well done, you did it, I'm so proud of you, and being able to say those things inside of yourself. Because at the end of the day, being able to hear Him say that to you and being able to say that within yourself is going to be life changing and transformative.
And just like that, episode 10 of the Radiant Journey podcast comes to a close. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you'll also come over to our website, radiantjourneypodcast.com. We would love any comments or feedback you'd like to share. We're also always looking for future topics to share here on the podcast. So if you have any ideas, we'd love to hear from you.